So you'll remember last week that we had the discussion about Jack and his relationship with his grandma, and his grandma having, being so upset at having to ask him to clean up his room, and what you learned from that about, being courteous and caring for your grandma and realizing that she wasn't trying to harm you. So somebody wrote in a response to that BBC. So I thought I would read it and make some comments on it. So it's by somebody in their early 20s who actually lived here for a while. Okay, so he said, since in your talk about courtesy you said you were curious, because I said I was curious, kind of why it happens in families or in workplaces or in monasteries or wherever, that we know simple things that we can do that are polite, that make life easier for other people, and we don't do them. Okay? So I said I was curious about that. So John said he wanted to share some thoughts. So he said, for many people that basic courtesy of doing chores and so forth, to be kind to the people around us, actually has to be cultivated. Maybe you cultivated it as a youth, but not everyone has such a strong sense of consideration for others or conscience. This is actually something I really appreciated learning about at the Abbey. You said a mature adult should know how to do these things, but maturing into an adult is a process that can go on, perhaps well into future lives. So it made me think, about we do have to learn how to pay attention to how our behavior influences the people around us. And we aren't necessarily automatically born with that. You would think that because we live in an interdependent society and world that, we would see that when the people around us are happy, then that impacts us in a positive way. You would think that, but the way our afflicted mind works, sometimes we're so much into ourselves that we think what makes us happy is just to win or to do what we want or whatever. And he's right, it does need to be cultivated, and we need to be taught that. Yeah. So I guess some people are taught in their homes, some people taught, in different situations. I guess you do know this, that it has to be cultivated. Otherwise, you wouldn't have seen a need to give that talk. That's right. If this thing didn't need to be cultivated, if we already had it, no reason for the talk. And if it couldn't be cultivated, then also no reason for the talk. I think my point is to say that it isn't only painful on the side of the authority doing the reminding, but also on the side of the confused person blinded by self-centeredness. They, I, want harmony, peace, and happiness as much as everyone else, but genuinely don't have the clarity and open-heartedness to understand how to create it. So that, that's very true. And so we do need to, teach people sometimes in difficult or painful ways, to pay attention to how their behavior influences others, and to think about modifying it, because it actually helps them to arrive at the harmony, peace, and happiness that they desire themselves. Whereas sometimes just going full force on our self-centered thought, we may win the argument, but it doesn't create harmony, peace, and what else? And happiness. It creates discord, rivalry, resentment, and more anger. But we often aren't aware of that, So we keep doing the same thing again and again, thinking that we'll get a different result when we do it. They have some saying for that, besides walking down the same street and you're thinking you'll get a different place. What is it they say?
If you keep doing the same thing over and over again with a different result than you were thinking you would
Oh, okay. So if you do the same thing again and again, thinking you're going to get different results, that's the definition of being nuts. It is crazy, isn't it? You know, we all do it. You know, it's like, well, this time, this strategy that has never worked for me, or that worked, you know, maybe when I was a kid, but doesn't work now, this time, it's going to work. Of course, it doesn't. If they understood what's needed to be mature and contribute to the collective well-being, they may then lack the confidence, fortitude, or compassion that would enable them to exert themselves in whatever activity is needed to make said contribution. This seems to be an effect of the laziness of discouragement. So here he's saying even somebody, you know, understands what to do, the small acts of consideration, but they're lazy in doing them because they lack the confidence to do them. They don't have the energy, they lack the confidence, the fortitude, or the compassion. You know, so it takes a little bit of extra energy to do that. You know, we lack it. Or it takes a little bit of compassion, but you know. So that's very true. You know, that sometimes we understand what to do to create peace, harmony, and so forth, but we don't do it because it's just too easy to do it in our old dysfunctional, silly ways. You know, the groove is there, so we go down, we follow that groove, instead of pausing and saying, you know, this time I do have a choice and I can do it differently. And it may take a little bit of extra energy, but let's try, you know. And the thing is, if we do that and we try and we get a different result, then that new result, which is the result we wanted all along, is, you know, having a more pleasant environment to live in and nicer relationships with people. Getting that result will again feed us and encourage us to do that new behavior again, you know. And as we habituate to it, then it doesn't take so much energy. So I thought there's some very nice comments here that I wanted to share with you. Okay, anything?